Welcome to episode 92 of Talking Dairy, the podcast that's all about Kiwi dairy farmers with stories, ideas and practical advice. I'm Willie McKnight, your host for this episode and DairyNZ Area Manager for Central Waikato. Recently we hosted an event at Liam and Gillian Bunnik's Waikato farm where we explored the innovative ways technology and data are transforming farm operations. We'll unpack what we shared at the event, hear firsthand from Gillian about why and how they have adopted different technologies in their operations, and get insights from DairyNZ scientist Brian Dela Rue about the opportunities with technology to unlock productivity on farm. So today we're here with Gillian Bunnik, and she's a 50-50 share milker at Tauwhare in Hamilton. We're also here today with Brian Dela Rue, who's a research engineer with the science team at DairyNZ at Newstead. So welcome along, you two, for this podcast today. So we're going to be talking about tech. Gillian, you are 50-50 share milker and you've adopted a fair bit of technology on your farm. We're going to talk about why you've adopted that technology. But I suppose the first question would be, Brian, what do you see the long-term sector challenges around people?
We can't talk about tech without talking about people first, really. They're essential to our farm business. They're our greatest opportunity, but also our greatest challenge. Productivity gains, whether you have tech or not, really needs capable people, engaged farm teams, and we do have an issue with recruiting and retaining people. Recent surveys have shown us that around 45% of farmers are saying it's getting harder to get the right people on farm. About 1 in 5 farmers don't have enough staff to meet their needs, and about another 1 in 5 farms don't have the team with the knowledge and skills to operate the farm profitably and sustainably. So, we really need to think about how we recruit and retain. And, we have enough people coming through dairy. We've got about 6,000 people coming into the sector each year. But after 12 months, we've got less than half of them still in the industry. And that gets worse over time. We've got some great effort and input by overseas workers. Again, after, say, 5 years, we've got less than half of them still in the sector. They've either gone home or they've moved into other areas. So, real challenges there. It's around making sure we get the right people with the potential for dairy, but it's also around making sure we've got a really attractive job that keeps them in dairy and something they can really build a career around. So what can we do around that to make a difference? We've interviewed employees to say, what does the dairy sector need to do to attract and retain people working on on-farm jobs? And they came up with a list of key priorities. The first one is probably a little understandable, would be, say, better pay. But I'm not sure if that's going to solve all our problems. We can afford to pay enough to overcome other problems that people might see on dairy farming jobs. The second one was better bosses. And while that's pretty confronting, we've got some great bosses around the country in dairy, but, obviously not enough. It's the simple things that probably cost nothing to make a huge difference in the way your team operates and the work productivity you get from your team. That's around leadership, really good organisational skills, and just people feeling really valued and part of your team. So they're there to make sure they do a great job for you. The next 3 key things were all around hours of work. So they're saying reduce total of hours of work, reduce unsociable hours, and reduce weekend work. So, if we're going to be able to deliver on those sort of requests and needs for people to want to really engage with the job, we're going to have to either get more people, which that would be a challenge, or we're going to have to increase our workplace productivity. And we've got to become more efficient at what we do, try and get the same output with less hours worked. And so we can have efficient processes, automation of tasks wherever we can, and it's affordable, but also going to have to pull on some of those milking levers around milking efficiency, milking intervals, and even looking at milking frequencies to say, how can we shorten that day when milking governs the length of the day and takes up about 50% of the hours on farm?
So, Gillian, do you want to just run us through your farm sort of system, number of cows and your staff? If you start off with your staff first, just on experience and how long they've been with you, etc.
We milk 750 cows through a 70-bale rotary near Tauwhare, and we have 3 full-time staff. They do have varying rosters. We have a 2IC, a herd manager and a farm assistant that we have a roster that we sort of rotate time off with.
So with your 70 bale rotary, you've got, two herds going through that shed and 2 vats and 2 supply numbers, obviously, which makes it a little bit different than most setups. You have those 2 herds all year, except for obviously at calving time. But the shed has a fair bit of what we call, I suppose, basic technology anyway, doesn't it? You've got cup removers, an automatic teat wand. So the cows, even though you have this, you still have 2 in the shed at all times for milking. And then, of course, you've got your ProTrack with the drafting gate, which is all sort of original tech that was put in when the shed was built. Obviously, also, you've got your automatic wash, so your Waikato hygienist system doing your wash. So basically plug in and the shed washes itself, detergent, everything like that. So that frees up some time having to wait round for your wash. It does everything automatically. But then when you've come on as share milkers, you've decided to invest in tech right from the word go. Would that be right, Gillian?
Yeah, just to try and, I guess, help at key times that are really busy on farm to support us with making decisions and just to try and help reduce the workload on staff too, because it can be really sort of stressful or hard at different times for farming. It's being seasonal.
You've obviously invested in wearables, which seems to be on the upward trend within the dairy industry at present. We're sort of sitting at around 18% of all farms have some kind of wearable technology, whether it be tags or collars. And so do you want to just talk us through your big investment around your wearables?
Yeah, so we decided straight away as we were going share milking to try and free up a little bit of time after calving, right at the beginning of mating, with adopting the collars. So the first kind of benefit is no tail painting, which is really time consuming. The second is pre-mating heats. Again, sort of at the end of calving, everyone's really tired and it's a busy time. So you're just trying to free up that space. And with the wearables, it's just all that information is there. So that helps with us to make decisions early on. We don't need to really do anything. We can just get a list sent through to us of any estrus cows. From the get-go, we know straight away which cows have calved in July and haven't had a pre-mating heat. So that's really valuable information for us moving forward into mating. The third sort of decision was around actual mating time itself. We were manually drafting cows as they came onto the feed pad, which was in the afternoon, really labour intensive and just quite challenging pulling cows off the feed pad. And so I guess probably the main time as well when that pinch happens is when staff are actually off. So, in the weekends when you've got staff rostered off and you're down a staff member and then you're trying to draft cows and get mating going, it's all, very busy. So that was probably a major decision to try and change our drafting from manual to the ProTrack gate. Yeah, so that saves all of us, all staff waiting at the shed 2:45 to try and draft.
Yep. So with doing your AB in the afternoon, you were waiting at the gate, or 2 or 3 people waiting at the gate as those cows came in to be milked, and you were drafting out before they were milked into a holding pen for AB during milking. So now it would be that they hopefully would come through the gate and be milked first and then be drafted out, really waiting for the AB tech when they come maybe a little bit later now than before. Would that be correct?
We do our AB during milking time. So sort of as they're drafted, the AB tech is there ready to do the mating. So it's all quite streamlined.
So there's a cost to that. Obviously, there was a setup cost and there is ongoing costs. So obviously, not all costs can be actually, quantified in profit. There's some costs there that you just see the intangible gains from rather than the tangible gains. So I suppose the intangible is the fact that it's just runs smoother and there's a lot more less stress. And once it's dialed in, you're not missing cows or going looking for cows in the middle of the mob.
Yep, that's right. I do think it is less stressful on the cows just being drafted through the gate rather than trying to pull them out and separate them as a whole mob. Just thinking about, like I said, those pinch times when if you've got a staff roster where there's a couple of days when someone's off, just making sure that we're always covered and it's not really stressful during those times for us and for the staff to try and do that job.
Yeah. So that's one aspect of your wearable, but you're also getting the gains around seeing the rumination and any health issues coming up with the cows. Arguably, the human eye usually picks up those health issues quicker than the collar. The collar's usually a little bit more wearable because you would normally see those health signs quicker. You're seeing a lot of data, Gillian. Like, do you find you're reviewing that data a lot more than maybe if you were just looking at written data or data entered into your Minder system?
The longer we have the data coming through, the more patterns we can see and the more information we can gather to sort of make decisions. And that's, like you said, we get information around rumination. So as we are looking at grazing rotations and grass quality, it's also how does that impact the cows and also heat stress. So yeah, it definitely comes into play, all that information to try and help us make decisions, on farm every day, essentially, if you are willing to look at that data and check and follow along.
So as far as your mating, do you reckon this technology has made it a lot smoother and less stressful? Has it improved your results a lot, or do you feel you would still get those same results but there's less effort involved?
Overall, it hasn't improved our mating performance as such. We already had really good mating performance, but that was probably due to, like, Liam's parents are on farm and they were able to support earlier on before we were share milking during that mating time. So as they stepped back and we had to take over, there was just no way that we could plug that gap, especially with having young kids and with staff having more time off. So as the system has changed, we have had to adapt and make it easier for ourselves.
So that's a big part of your wearables. The cost there is obviously a subscription monthly coming through. There was the initial setup of the towers, and also you have sort of upped that after your first year, even put another tower to the other part of the farm, so that was more cost. But it's meant you've been able to get that data before the herd come back into range, so you're getting that data quicker and it gives you a bit more of an insight pre the mating that day?
Yeah, so just with that data, obviously, you're not just getting cows in and getting all their numbers and trying to figure out who you're going to mate to who, or if you did pre-mating heats, you would be able to do that. But I sort of have a list, that's just ever growing, and that sort of pop on the list and you're able to dive into that cow and then make a better breeding decision, because you can really strategically choose who you're breeding, which straws and semen with. So that's also really helped with making decisions earlier on, but in an easy way, you just get the list.
What was the background and the reason you selected the collar over, say, an ear tag or a different type of collar?
Yeah, so we did know that Woolflex was partnered with ProTrack, and at the time, I guess it's just about different technologies talking to each other. So we did know that Woolflex just had automated draft lists that went through to ProTrack. We don't need to do anything apart from a few, just the checking that list does go through to ProTrack in the morning, in the afternoon or morning whenever we're doing AB. So yeah, I guess that was a big bonus for us, knowing that connection was there. Yeah, in terms of wearables, I think cost effectively, we had to make sure it wasn't going to be too expensive. Price did come into effect. We didn't want to go with something too expensive, something that we could still afford but have a meaningful benefit from. So yeah, the cost came into play as well.
So, Brian, we see a lot of different technologies out on farm as far as wearables go, like different ones. What advice would you give, Brian, to people selecting their wearables, heading, if they've got nothing? I mean, Gillian and Liam's case, they already had the drafting gate, so that was already in place. So they had to choose something that was going to merge technologies together. Brian, any advice you would give on someone with a blank canvas, what they're going to select?
Those issues you just discussed are really important ones. If I go just back a level, we do a 5-yearly tech survey, which gives us indication of what tech farmers are adopting. And at the start of 2023, around 16% of all farms had a wearable device, whether it's a collar, or air tag, or a bolus, or something like that. We asked them, if you're able to, which one technology would you invest in the next 2 years? And about a third of farmers said wearables. 20% of farmers said no tech. So it's not all about tech, but that was high on their priority list. So it's something that potentially, with a good payout, could mean it really takes off. we often get asked, how well do they work? Now, that's a really tough question. There's very little published on the performance of wearables on pasture-raised farms. Way back in about 2010, when wearables are really new to the industry, our farmers were asking those questions, and I did some trials on commercial farms for technologies on 3 commercial farms. We were taking milk samples off every cow twice a week to test them for milk progesterone, so we could say, should we expect a heat now, and was there one? And we did that for 4 weeks pre and during mating. Now, when we did that, they were very new to the country, and we found only about 1 out of the 4 technologies worked well, and some of them worked pretty poorly. Most of that was because the software, the algorithms, were designed for housed animals overseas, and they needed to adjust them for our pasture-based systems. Now, over time, we had some pretty interesting discussions with the companies at that time, as you'd expect, and we shared data and did what we could to support them to make a difference, and they did. And while we haven't done further tests, because they can change their software overnight and the performance will change dramatically, we're not in a position to keep testing gear. But from what we see from farmers are pretty happy with the results they're getting. Now, there have been a couple of studies this year looking at performance. LIC had a quick look at the data they had on herds, and they had about nearly 900 herds that had wearables, and they compared them with about nearly 4,000 herds that didn't have wearables. And when they looked at all the repro results, there was no significant difference between the two. It didn't show a big step in performance, but it also didn't show a drop either. So that's promising. But we didn't know what the performance was pre-wearables and post-wearables. So our team did a study earlier this year where we recruited 200 herds with wearables. 140 of them had the data we needed for 5 seasons. So we were able to have a look at the performance of those herds for 2 seasons before wearables were installed, and then at least another 2 seasons afterwards. They were matched. Every herd with wearables was matched up with 8 similar herds in the area without. I think there's just under 1,200 herds without wearables to compare them with. And again, when we look at those results, there was no real statistical difference between those with and without. Those putting collars on, a lot of them had really good repro anyway, and that good repro continued. Now, heat detection is just one part of that whole repro result, so there's a lot of other things farmers have to get right. So that says to us reliable performance, but if you are looking at your return on investment calculations to see, am I going to make a lot of money about putting wearables on cows? It would indicate that unless you've got a real problem with heat detection, then you probably shouldn't be banking too much on a big jump in your 6-week in calf rate and the money you might make from that. But it's got all those benefits that Gillian talked about, making a bit more risk-free in terms of not relying on key personnel to be there at every milking over mating, giving those pre-mating heats, which is really valuable. And it's also some of those ones that are putting the wearables on were changing the plan. So they were going to all AI and no bull. So it gave them the option to do that using short gestation semen, and lots of options came up. But what I also find really promising and for farmers is the relationship being developed between the vets and the farmers, where the data's there to really analyse what's going on over the mating period, and also with the animal health side of things. So I think mating performance is going pretty well with wearables. The other area with the animal monitoring, there's very little robust science on pasture-grazed systems to tell us more about decision-making around rumination time and other things. Certainly some trends going on there, identifying cows that have had changes in their rumination, health events, etc. Probably a bit early days to making some hard and fast rules around what you do if the rumination's below this number or that number, and I think some more research is required in that space. But again, really interesting data that the vets and farmers are having a great opportunity to have a look and understand those trends a little bit better, and hopefully we can do more to back that up with some studies to help with the decision-making based on that data.
So, Gillian, on farm, you guys not only have wearables for your animal monitoring, drafting, heat, but also around health. But on farm, you have some health tools as well. So you've got using your Mazda test for your mastitis check. You've also got effluent management, so some tools in there for auto shut-off for your effluent, so around not having any issues with breakdowns, being able to remotely shut off your effluent pump and a variable speed effluent pump so that you're getting a good application and a bit cheaper, saving money there. You've also invested this year in AIMA, so helping you do your farm walks more efficiently and using AI to help predict trends. You've got some apps you use on farm around your staff management and rosters. And you've also you use Orange Cross for your health and safety. So I'll let you talk through that tech, Gillian.
Yeah, so firstly, we've got our master test, which has been really great helping us make decisions on mastitis treatments. There was a little bit of a concern around treating cows that weren't curing, and so we really made a decision to invest in the master test to try and highlight which bug we were actually dealing with and then treating it with the right antibiotic the first time. And that was really key for us to know to make that decision. And so, basically we just have a sample and we can have the results within 24 hours on farm. And that just makes our decision so simple. It's obviously connected to the vets as well, so they can get the information come through. So we can be treating a cow with that correct antibiotic. Actually, within the master test as well, there is the antibiotic, the sensitivity. And so we know that it can fight that bug, which is really great. So that's really helped us make decisions on what to treat, and also really supporting our decision not to treat cows with E. coli, because those were the ones that we were potentially treating and wasting antibiotics on. So, money's going down the drain as well as milk when that cow can self-cure. Also, just the other bugs that are around staph, and so making decisions on culling. If we've got potential staph cows, we can highlight where they are in the herd and separate them into a different mob, so we know we're not going to contaminate across the herd.
So, Gillian, you would, rather than treat those cows, you would first take a sample, and then the sample will be cultured in the master test, and then you make a decision about treatment within sort of 12 hours. Would that be right, of what you're going to do or what treatment, or some you just won't treat and some you would cull without treatment? Is that correct?
Depends on time of the season, how sick the cow is. We would always give Ketamax. So as soon as we get a mastitis cow, we would treat with a Ketamax so she's got pain relief on board. And then we're waiting for that result to come through. And then as soon as that result comes through, we know we can treat with the right antibiotic straight away.
So sort of one-off cost, but then ongoing costs around each culture. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there is the ongoing cost. It's $20 a cartridge, which it is a high cost, but when you think about a treatment, if you're treating E. coli cows, you're effectively creating, antibiotic resistance or, potentially using antibiotics when you don't need to. So you're creating that in your herd, but also you're wasting the money on antibiotics. So you'd hope that the amount of times that you're getting E. coli or bugs that you don't need to treat, you're saving that money in the long run. Even though we are putting Ketamax on board, but that's for, best practice for helping pain relief, isn't it? And help her fight.
In terms of mastitis detection and other animal monitoring or decision-making technologies, there's been very little change over the last 5 years, hardly any change at all. The only technology in that animal monitoring area has been the wearables, that's really taken off over that time. There's less than 10% of farmers with an inline mastitis detection system, very slow, so farmers are probably struggling to see the real value, but it's really nice to have cow-side tests like you have too, that once you've identified a cow, then you're able to treat them.
Yep. So we also have a teat wand, which helps us automate teat spraying. And that is just purely from saving a job for the staff members to do. It cuts off. And so it frees up that person's job to do other things in terms of keeping the flow of the shed and monitoring lameness or any other observational things they can pick up. So it's just one-time saving piece of technology that's there, really. If you choose the right system, it definitely has a really good coverage, provided you're checking the system is working correctly. So I guess all the staff need to do is just check that it is all functioning, and then it just does its job. So that saves us a lot of time.
That's quite key for you on farm, Gillian, because your person at cups off is running the backing gate and keeping those cows coming in and keeping that cow flow. So that way the teat spray is still happening, but the cow flow they can really keep an eye on that cow flow and not overuse to that backing gate.
Yep, that's right.
In terms of milking efficiency with technology, we had a look in the 250 herringbone and 250 rotary dairies that we had in our technology survey to see what difference tech's making. So we looked at cow's milk per hour, cow's milk per hour per person to see is there any difference. And particularly in a rotary, tech does make a difference. If you have got cup removers, auto teat spraying, and usually drafting as well, you can minimise the number of people in the shed to milk, and that makes a big difference in terms of the people hours per week to cup cows. At the moment, on average, there's around 55 people hours per week cupping cows. So if you could have one person there rather than two, it can make a huge difference. But of course, with efficiency, you've got to weigh that up with other things you're trying to achieve. So it's always an efficiency versus quality output you're after. You've got to get that balance right to see what you're trying to do there. When we looked at herringbone dairies, we didn't see as much impact of tech in there. The farmers that were at the top 25% in terms of labour productivity, cows milk per hour per person, had one person cupping mostly, and they could cup to 30 sets of cups before a second person was introduced. But, cup removers in some instances would have been supporting that decision just to have the one person there to take the stress off them when things don't always go to plan, etc. So tech can make a difference, but it's more obvious in the rotaries than in the herringbones. But, for the same size shed, there's a real difference in milking efficiency from some sheds to other sheds, and there's an opportunity to have a close look at the efficiency metrics, and particularly you can have a look at the Fonterra Milking Insights report, shows you how you sit in relation to other similar sized sheds, and just make your decisions from that. Take a good look at how your processes are working. Could you be more efficient? Are you achieving the outcomes you want? And make changes as necessary.
So Gillian, obviously in your shed, you've got no in-shed meal, so you haven't got that as either an enticement to come on or a reason that the cows don't get off. So having that cow flow is pretty key to keeping those cows wanting to come on, and also making sure the shed's moving efficiently and smoothly. So do you want to carry on down your list, Gillian, and talk about the other techs on farm?
Yep, we've actually just adopted AIMA this season, which is a pasture management or pasture grazing tool online to help us look at pasture covers. And also it uses AI to look at growth rates of different paddocks and things. So that's just been basically adopted because during spring and after spring, when there's periods of high growth, it is actually busy and it's hard to get those farm walks done at that time, especially if there's stuff rostered off on different days and things. So that's been a really good tool to cut our farm walks in half in terms of the time. And so they're getting done weekly, and that's giving us a lot more data and information on how well paddocks are growing. And then we can make decisions around types of grasses and things like that. So my husband Liam has put in all the different pasture types and grasses into AIMA to help us see the best growth rates in each paddock and the areas on the farm, which has been really helpful, just I guess to make informed decisions moving forward for grass growth and to try and get the most out of our grass.
So as far as tangible, you're getting that information at less cost, so less hours needed to do it, but it obviously has a monthly subscription to have that. But it seems like its payback is pretty good in the fact that you're getting that info when you need it. Brian, you had a comment about pasture tools?
Yeah, great potential in that area. Like we know that pasture harvest is a really strong driver of profitability on farms. In our 5-year tech survey, we would ask questions around pasture measurement and pasture recording of data, etc. And 5 years ago, only 36% of farmers were using some sort of objective measure. And mostly that was the rising plate meter. After that was visual assessment as you might be driving through the paddock or around the paddock. We thought then that the satellite technology was going to really take off. It was affordable and could give farmers the data they needed to make better decisions. But that hasn't happened. There's been a lot of challenges with the satellite, with cloud cover, trying to get accuracy at the top and low ends of pasture cover. But there's a lot of work going on at the moment around that to try and make that even better. So I'm really looking forward to some improvements there and new technologies like AIMA, making sure you can still get out there and do that pasture walk and get the data you need. Of those farmers who are doing some sort of measurement, 45% of them are recording it in some sort of software so they could use it in some fashion. And again, I think a missed opportunity. The more data you can have, the more you can see how it's plotted up and see how things are going on farm and what decisions you can make from that. Just even paddocks grazed, 18% were recording which paddocks were grazed when, and that really helps when you're looking at the end of season. How many grazings has this paddock had? How's it really performing? What am I getting from this paddock, and should I be thinking about renewal? it's really surprising. Like quite a few years ago, when we were working with some really good pasture managers, and for them, it was without documenting, it was really difficult to work out which paddock was the right ones to regraze. They thought these ones, but when the data came out, it was actually that one's performing a lot better than I thought it was. So there's a lot to keep in your head over the season, and having objective measures and data allows you to analyse that. It's an area we'd love to see move forward with technology and really help farmers increase their pasture harvest.
Yeah. With different seasons, going into summer and not always knowing how much of a surplus you've got, we were also hoping to make a decision on when to make silage and when we can cut paddocks out a little bit easier just based on growth of paddocks and going forward. So we were also hoping that would be a really helpful tool to make decisions that way. Yeah, that was also another big benefit from AIMA.
Yes, and I think any software which allows you to put the fence in the right place for the cover area and cover feed you want to give the cows, but also know when you give them a little bit more, how's that affecting your round length? Because that's something you get easily lost when you've got multiple herds. Just a little error here and there can make a big difference, and actually really knowing what your round length is so important. I think the other real opportunity with great software and a bit of AI in the background with models and things is being able to do that analysis, but start to do support decision making where it might give you some options, like if you want to conserve some paddocks for silage, it can start to suggest maybe 3 paddocks. You can shut up these 3 paddocks and see what that does to your round length. Whereas you might be thinking, I was thinking 2. It gives you an opportunity to look at those suggestions, have another think about it, and you may well be right, but just challenging your thinking occasionally or giving you some insight that you might be able to make that decision a little bit earlier than you thought. So I think those models working away in the background all the time will be really useful, especially when the weather's changing, growth rates are changing a lot, to help farmers keep on top of pasture growth and things like that.
Yeah, and pasture quality, because that's, as you're going into summer, that's our biggest battle, isn't it? And you never know what the season's going to hold, so you're always trying to make decisions, but it can catch you pretty quickly in 3 weeks' time. You sort of either got too much or not enough, and so anything that can help us make that decision, we thought, yeah, let's get that on board and let's trial that. So that was sort of our thinking behind AIMA, really.
Gives Liam the confidence to carry on in the tractor mowing some paddocks in front rather than stopping and wished you had when it rained. All right, obviously you've got a variable speed effluent pump drive and flow meter, so that's helping you making sure that the effluent system's running at its full potential. It's probably one of the biggest motors on the farm. You guys can irrigate about half of your farm with effluent. So having that would be a peace of mind, Gillian, in the fact that you're saving power, hopefully, and that the pump's running at its most efficient. But also, I know I came around and saw you a while ago, and Liam had a bit of effluent on his hands, and he'd just been in the paddock unblocking the irrigator, and it let him know that it was not flowing properly, and he was able to shut it down remotely from his phone in the paddock rather than driving all the way back up the farm to turn it off or try and do it while it was going. So tangible would be the fact that you're not having a mistake and having a spill, but also the intangible is the fact that you can access the system from anywhere and turn it off or on.
Yeah, I do have a little laughable moment. I do joke about the variable speed drive being Liam's other girlfriend because of all the text messages he gets. I'm sort of thinking, when it goes off, who is that? And it's, always that irrigator going off. It's quite funny. But yes, it is definitely that communication from the irrigator that really helps when there's a problem, and that's an area where we need to know when there's a problem. So in terms of regulations and helping us support that, it's just invaluable, really.
That investment in technology makes a real difference to your on-farm efficiency. We've been following 10 farms around the country, just looking at what their day looks like, what their week looks like, who's doing what when, and we'll do that 5 times during the year. Some of those farms are saying it's sometimes the equipment and the infrastructure makes such a difference to what your day looks like. Is your effluent pond have enough capacity that you don't have to regularly be emptying it? And is your spreading system good enough that you can leave it and it does the job for you without continually going back to shift and do things like that? So while there's some cost associated with those tech, it can make a real difference in terms of your whole team's day and how many hours are required to monitor it and keep it working.
Yeah, and just touching on that, obviously, it's frustrating when you've got a blockage and you're going to and from back to the cow shed to try and get it unblocked, turn it on, go back, check. It's a huge time saving when you can just turn it on from your phone. It's just, one of those things, especially with our system where we do have a large rainwater catchment, and we do need to make sure that it's going to make the most money out of the irrigation on farm.
So that cost, Gillian, is one that the owners would normally cover. And so you have to have that relationship there that you can prove the point that it's beneficial to both them and also you as share milkers having that technology, because obviously normally it would be the owner of the property that would wear that cost. But then it doesn't take much if you have an incident and a spill and you are fined, or, you have an infringement. It's just that safety of having that knowledge that it's going like it should be. Is that what you would say is the tangible part of it?
Yeah, it comes back to what we were talking about at the start, just around retaining staff and things. So we have the staff members shifting the irrigator a lot of the time, and so it's a big job for us and it's a busy job. So we want to make sure that we can do it as efficient as possible. Otherwise, someone's going to be just on irrigator job all day. So we want to make sure that, we can get everything going as efficient as possible with our staff. So from a larger farm perspective, in terms of managing our staff and making things easier to do that, it's definitely invaluable. But also, I guess it's just thinking about times can be stressful on farm, especially when it comes to those kinds of regulations. So how can we make decisions to try and minimise those stressful events or things that can become quite stressful on farm and time consuming?
All right. So your two main working tractors on farm have GPS. It's a big part of your compliance around fertiliser placement, spraying, proof of placement as well, and also record keeping, I suppose, of where you've put that placement and being able to show that at your farm audit or your shed inspection.
That technology, I guess, is just about efficiency around putting on fertiliser and things, and that's definitely an area where there's been a spotlight on for the last couple of years to just try and really be as efficient as we can, both cost-wise and for the environment. So there's benefits all around for that. But, accuracy, I guess, if you're someone who likes to really be accurate and know that you're not doubling up in places and things, that's also another benefit. But there's multiple benefits in terms of time saving, not doubling up, cost savings, not doubling up in certain areas. And I guess to people that sort of think, I know the area, it is quite amazing if you do adopt the technology and then you sort of think where you would have driven versus where TrackMap would take you on the paddock. It's probably quite amazing to see how efficient you can get when you are actually following that technology. So I guess accuracy, and that's going to save you time and money, isn't it? So that's been a huge benefit.
All right. So do you want to just talk through the last sort of few things that are probably key parts of the farm, and then we'll get on to what apps you use for managing staff and recording?
Yep, we also have scales on the wagon. So that's, again, around accuracy for staff loading up. On a bigger farm, it's just trying to really get that accuracy to make sure we know exactly how much feed the cows are getting. And so that's just peace of mind for us to know how much we're loading up. I guess as well to sort of try and reduce feed wastage. So for that decision, it's about, different times of the year, and we're using the amount of feed we give the cows alongside AIMA with the grass management. But when there's a surplus, we can give them more grass, and when there's a drier period or wetter, we can feed more on the feed pad. So I guess it's just about being able to make decisions around how much feed we are giving the cows accurately, and that's nice knowing for cost savings as well. We're not wasting feed on the feed pad. We're not feeding out too much if there's a surplus of grass. In terms of our health and safety, we use Orange Cross. And so we adopted that system as we took over share milking to help regulations with like shed inspections and to try and streamline and get everything on to digital. And that's been really helpful so that we don't have to have a whole lot of sort of paperwork everywhere. We can keep everything online and just in a tidy place. That was sort of really good to help us streamline our health and safety, to be able to put all our hazards online, all of our risk management and incident reports. It's just one easy place to go. And so that sort of covers all bases with our health and safety regulations. So for our staff, we use Google Calendar, which is a really easy tool just to be able to share a calendar with workers in terms of when everyone's got time off. So everyone knows in the roster who's on that day and who's off. They can just quickly check on their phones to see what's going on. You can put relief milkers in there, and it's a really easy tool to be able to just see who's working and who's off. Just touching on with retaining staff at the start, there was a sort of a comment about, just different rosters and trying to work in. And I think, like as we try and adapt and create rosters to help retain staff, having a system where you can sort of easily manage and everyone can see is really important, because it becomes more complicated when there's more people off on a big farm. You need to cover those gaps, don't you? You've really got to make sure that the communication with who's on and who's off is really clear. So that's my job on farm. The other tool we use for staff communication is WhatsApp, it's a really simple tool, and honestly, it's just fantastic. You can take photos, you can do voice recordings, anything on there. So it's been really great now. We've started up different chats. We've got like a farm chat, and I know someone started up like identifying, where the weeds are on farm chat, so that we can go to those groups and just see really easily where jobs are needed to be done, and just being able to share one thing on there so that the message gets across to everyone is really cool. The other thing I guess that we use it mainly for is during spring. That's when the communication is really key, because it's a stressful time. And so if you've got information that needs to be relayed really quickly, or you can take photos of, important things, and you can share a video. So it's really just being able to use that media to make better decisions. You sort of, a worker might say, we've got a sick cow, and it's like, take a photo, what's she doing? And you can kind of get a bit more of a picture early on rather than not really knowing. So that's been really great. We also use RTs, which are little radios, so that we don't have to use our phones on farm as much. And that's just a simple way. So if someone's down the back of the farm, you can just RT, turn the irrigator on, or there's something down here, or just quick communication. So that's also really key.
And so we've touched on the main techs you use, but obviously there's other things in the background on farm as well. We talked about your cup removers, your ProTrack. They were all sort of put on when the cowshed was built. And obviously the rotary cowshed in itself is tech. You've got a lot of moving parts in that for efficiency. Is there any other tech, Gillian, that, you feel in the future you may look at that would be beneficial, but the cost might be something that sort of puts you off, or it's not mainstream enough yet? You'll wait and see how it develops?
So we've heard of the ozone teat spraying system, which we're really intrigued to find out about. I guess the teat spray is such a huge cost. We spend a lot of money on teat spray, which is warranted with the animal health benefit. But at the same time, if we can find a cheaper, more efficient system, then we'll definitely look at it. So, it's just waiting to see what happens in that area, and to see if anyone's got any successful, that technology that's successful on farm. We're really keen to see how that works.
Yeah, you also mentioned, in this day and age, you haven't got a backup generator yet on farm. That's something you need to probably talk the farm owners into investing in, or you invest in it yourself, just to save you if the power does go off. And then you also mentioned lameness cameras as well.
I guess just the thought behind that is just an extra set of eyes, isn't it? And I guess during key times like calving, when you are busy and you don't necessarily pick up what's happening, or if, we are on a larger farm, so you're not always able to see every cow walk out every day. So having that extra set of technology eyes would be hugely beneficial. But, at this stage, it's just the cost wouldn't make enough of a benefit, really. So it's waiting for potentially the cost to come down, or for it to make a bigger benefit for it to be adopted, really.
So for farmers who are thinking about adopting similar tech to what you've got, what advice would you give them, Gillian, about choosing their tech and what they're going to use it for on farm?
So I guess with any technology, you do need to have someone that's passionate about it and going to use it. I guess that's the key. The idea of putting collars on to make things simple and easy and to improve your reproduction is probably not the reality. It's about how can it change your system to make it easier, and looking at the benefits. I guess in some ways there's other things that come up, like other challenges. So it's just about knowing that there'll be speed bumps along the way. And if you've got someone that's passionate about running that technology, then you'll be away. Yeah, so I guess it's someone that's willing to sort of be in the background to make the most of that technology is key, because otherwise it's going to sit there and not do anything for you. It can't work miracles if you're not willing to keep an eye on or analyse the data, or if you got to have that passion there, I think.
So you're getting all the data, but you're not really getting any smarter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about contract milkers or share milkers? If you want something to use on farm, how do you pitch it to the farm owner? What do you think the best way to approach it is?
I think it definitely is around how can we make better decisions on farm. I do think that adopting technology is about how to make better decisions, how to save costs and save time. So those are kind of the key three things that we look at when we're trying to adopt a technology. How can it make us, do a better job on farm at the end of the day, whether that's time saving, cost saving, all of the above.
I suppose a big help would be having farm owners that are key, into technology as well, or into making those savings, and not sort of turning a blind eye to making it more efficient. It's about making the whole job efficient, and to warrant those share milkers or contract milkers wanting to stay, there's a big cost in changing staff and changing people and jobs. So if you can try and soften or make it more attractive, that would be a key part. Would you agree? Or
Yeah. And when you think about enjoying your job too, when you want that job satisfaction, how can you get that job satisfaction? Is it making decisions that make you a better farmer? Is it making more money? What is it that you are trying to achieve? So I guess if you're pitching it to the farm owner, when you're thinking about that position and what they can invest in, it's looking at all the benefits versus the costs, but there's always the intangibles. So how can you make your system efficient?
So Brian, I suppose sort of heading towards wrapping this up, where do you see the future with these technologies? It's, we've got AI coming through, a lot of opportunities that are going to be there. It's limitless really of what we can use it for. So where do you see it heading, Brian?
Just firstly, what Gillian was talking about, I think you are saying so many things that other farmers would echo as well about you really have to have a need for the tech. It has to add some real value to your business. So it's hard to recommend a tech to a particular farm. It's got to meet their needs and work for them well. You mentioned about really having a tech champion, and that's really, really important because so many technologies fall over or sit in a shed because of simple things. Just needed someone who knew a little bit more about it that could make sure that everyone was using things well. Before we go into the big grand things, just looking at all those technologies which are no cost or low cost. Apps particularly can be awesome. We had a farmer at our Australasian Dairy Science Symposium a couple of weeks ago. Jared and his wife Victoria are now equity partners on a 900 cow farm. We've worked with him in some workplace productivity work a few years back. He was really encouraging farmers, saying, take a look at anything that hardly costs you anything but makes a big difference to either the performance of the farm but also the performance of your team. He's taking a serious look all the time. I'll try them out and, I'll see if it works for us. He's asking us questions around milking intervals. I'm on 14 and 10. Could I be on 16 and 8 and milk a little bit later in the morning? He's looking for things around engagement with his team. He's giving every staff member, and quite a large team, gets an afternoon off once a month where they can do whatever they like, provided it provides a benefit to the whole farm team or the farm. And they've got to come back and report on it. And, real engagement. They end up, fixing things which is annoying everybody, spending time on things that just seem to be highest priority but make a really big difference. In terms of moving forward in the future, software particularly, so satellite improvements, camera technology, as you mentioned, Gillian, around, we've got lameness, we're adding condition score on to add more value to the same camera technology. Software is a lot cheaper than hardware and more reliable, often it can be upgraded very easily. They're important ones. When you mention around AI, I don't see it as being separate to general technology. It's just that background analysis and predictive ability. There's just a lot more modelling and number crunching going on there to support good decision making, and that'll evolve over time with good data to base it on. So that's really evolving. And again, getting a situation where you can have a virtual farm manager alongside you saying, what does the software recommend we do now? Let's have a talk about that. Those sort of things. That's probably where it's moving to. It always requires a really smart farmer to make sure you're interpreting those results well. ChatGPT, people use that for writing documents, but it can tell a few porkies sometimes, so you really have to know your stuff to implement it well. The things that I want to see moving faster is anything that can support greater pasture harvest and improved animal care on farm, and also our environmental footprint. They are really, really important to us, and they're challenging. A lot of time's required from farmers. If we can show and give evidence that we're doing those things really well, then technology will really help us in that space too. And maybe even the data coming off some of the technologies will be supporting genetic improvement, environmental expectations, and even supporting some policy decision making around farming too, because we'll have evidence and data that will show that maybe, methane emissions might be different on our farms than other ones and things like that. So technology is going to really be embedded at a science level and also on a farm level as well. The more data we get from commercial farms, the better. The point I was going to make about the sharing with farmers, we were having that discussion at one of our events, and one of the farmers had negotiated with their wearables. I think in their case might have been a 70-30 split in terms of cost, looking at where the benefits are to the share milker versus the farmer. It'll be different from each farm, but it gives the share milker particularly, or the contract milker, an opportunity to invest in tech without having to own the farm to be the decision maker. So I think that's really, really positive. It's really hard for a share milker to buy a drafting gate, but there are other technologies that you can take with you. Discussion came up around the wearables around, they would like to have a 3-year lease rather than a 5-year lease. Less risky for them perhaps, but then from the tech provider's point of view, they've got almost a guaranteed 5-year life. What are they going to do with the technology once it's been used on a farm for 2 years? So we've got to be fair in terms of how we support technology and how we use it as well. We're relying on the relationships with those companies to keep evolving, using the data to make better products for us. And I think the subscription system allows that relationship to continue with the farmers and provide really strong data for improved technologies.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Talking Dairy. A huge thank you to Gillian Bunnik for sharing her hands-on experience, and to Brian Dela Rue for bringing the science and practical insights to life. It's clear that adopting the right tools and strategies can make a big difference in improving productivity and efficiency on farm. This February and March, we are teaming up with Fonterra to bring you a series of events focused on reproduction, results, and genetic gain. These sessions will explore how smart breeding decisions can help build resilience and set your farm business up for success. Our events are tailored to your region, covering the topics that matter most to you while tackling the bigger challenges facing the dairy sector. Check out what's happening near you by visiting dairynz.co.nz events. Come along, hear from experts, and what actions other farmers are taking to move their farms forward. If you're keen to learn more about what we've talked about in this episode, we've linked in some useful websites in the show notes. And if you're enjoying Talking Dairy, don't forget to hit follow so you can keep up to date with our latest podcasts. You can also keep up to date with DairyNZ news on Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn, or go to our website and sign up for our fortnightly DairyNZ news emails. As always, if you have any feedback on this podcast or have some ideas for future topics or guests to have on the show, please email us at talkingdairy@dairynz.co.nz. Catch you next time.